All right, so you're gearing up for that leather production machine operator interview. We're diving into that today,
We are.
and we're going to try to arm you with some answers to some common interview questions.
Yeah, one of the things that's really important is to make sure that when you're answering these questions, you're really speaking to what the interviewer is looking for.
For sure. For sure.
It's not just about knowing the answer.
Right.
It's about knowing how to present the answer.
Okay, so let's dive into it. First question. Describe your experience with leather production machines. Sounds pretty straightforward, but how do you make it sing?
Right. So I think one of the things that people can do is instead of just listing off every single machine that they've ever worked on is really focus on the machines that are actually relevant to the job description.
Okay, so tailor it.
Yeah. So if they are, if they're looking for somebody who has experience with splitting machines, well, then that's what you want to talk about. You don't need to talk about, the different types of sewing machines that you've worked on or anything else like that.
Okay.
And then even within the realm of splitting machines, you can talk about the different models that you've worked on, any specialized techniques that you use. You really want them to understand that you have that hands-on experience.
And I bet they would probably ask follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Based on what you share about those machines.
Absolutely. And that's actually a good sign because that means that they're engaged.
Okay.
And so, don't be afraid to sort of, brag a little bit about the challenges that you've overcome. Maybe there was a time when you had to troubleshoot a particular problem or you had to be really adaptable and, change your approach based on the specific type of letter you were working with.
Yeah. Okay. So be ready for those curveballs.
Exactly.
Love it. Okay. Next question. What is your process for troubleshooting leather production machines when they malfunction? So this is interesting because it's not just about fixing the problem, but it's like, how do you even figure out what's going on?
Right. It's that critical thinking.
Yeah.
It's that problem solving. And so, anybody can say, oh, I'd call maintenance.
Right.
But you want to be able to articulate the steps that you would take,
Okay.
before you get to that point. So,
Well, walk me through it.
yeah. So, if a machine's malfunctioning, the first thing I would do is I would check the power supply. Make sure that it's actually plugged in and that there's not a blown fuse or something like that. And then from there, I would start inspecting the different parts of the machine. Maybe the belts are worn out, maybe there's something caught in the gears. And I would also be listening for any unusual sounds because a lot of times you can tell what's wrong with a machine just by the way that it sounds.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
Just like listening to it like it's talking to you.
Exactly. And, if you can, in your answer, if you happen to be familiar with some of the more technical aspects of these machines, maybe you've used an infrared thermometer to check for overheating components or, how to use a multimeter to test the electrical circuits. Mentioning those specifics shows that you've got the knowledge to back it up.
Totally. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you're not just guessing at this point. You've actually got some skills.
Exactly. And, and I think it's also important to acknowledge that, you're not going to have the answer to every single problem.
Right.
Every single time. And so if there is a time when, you weren't able to troubleshoot a problem, talk about what you learned from that experience,
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because it shows that, you're adaptable and that you're always looking for ways to improve.
Turn those learning moments into something positive.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay. Next question. This one's interesting. How do you ensure that leather production machines are properly maintained and serviced? So now we're talking about not just fixing a problem when it's broken, but like, how do you keep it from breaking in the first place?
Right. It's about prevention.
Yeah.
And it's about being proactive. And so, when you're answering this question, you want to think about the different aspects of machine maintenance,
Right.
So there's the routine cleaning, making sure that there's no dust or debris building up in the machines.
Right.
There's lubrication, making sure that all the moving parts are properly lubricated. There's also just doing those regular checks, like looking for any signs of wear and tear. And, and if you can mention specific intervals for these tasks,
Yeah.
like I always make sure to lubricate the cutting blades every 20 hours of operation or, whatever it might be.
Right.
That shows that you're really on top of things.
That level of detail really shows that you're thinking like a pro instead of just, I don't know, like someone just kind of flying by the seat of their pants.
Right.
And this ties into something that we see in the career guide for the leather production machine operator.
Yeah.
One of the things that they emphasize is that you're working in a fast-paced environment.
Right.
Where meeting those production targets is really important.
Right.
So keeping those machines running smoothly is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. And it can't be overstated enough how important safety is in
Right.
this environment. And so you can also weave that into your answer, talk about how you're committed to following lockout procedures before you do any maintenance,
Right.
to make sure that nobody accidentally turns on a machine while you're working on it.
Yeah,
Just emphasizing that safety is always top of mind.
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, speaking of safety, we have a question here about that.
Okay.
How do you ensure that leather production machines are operated safely and in compliance with regulations?
Right.
This feels like a mouthful of a question.
It is a bit of a mouthful, but again, it's about breaking it down. So the first part of the question is really about demonstrating your knowledge of safety protocols.
Okay.
And so, anybody can say, oh, I follow OSHA guidelines, but what does that actually mean?
Right.
So,
Yes.
for people who don't know, OSHA stands for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Right.
And they set all the standards for workplace safety. So you want to be able to speak to those guidelines and how they actually show up in your day-to-day work.
Yeah.
Do you have to wear safety glasses? Do you have to wear steel-toed boots?
Right.
What are the specific protocols that you follow?
Yeah, what does it look like?
Exactly. And then the second part of that question is really about how you ensure that your team members are also following those same protocols.
Oh, okay, so not just you, but like, how are you a leader in that?
Exactly.
Got it.
And so, maybe you have to give regular safety briefings to your team, or maybe you've, created a system for documenting near misses, so that you can identify potential hazards before they become accidents.
It's about creating that culture of safety
Exactly.
where everybody's looking out for each other
Exactly.
and not just themselves.
That's great.
And this is another area where being aware of industry trends can really give you an edge.
Okay. How so?
Well, there's a growing focus on sustainability
Right.
in all industries.
Of course. Yeah.
And leather production is no exception. And so if you can speak to that,
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you can mention how you would prioritize using eco-friendly cleaning products, or, how you're always looking for ways to minimize waste during the production process.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That shows that you're thinking about the bigger picture.
So it's like you're not just thinking about like, what am I doing with this machine today, but like, how does this all fit into, this larger
Right.
ethical framework, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
It shows that you're not just there to clock in and clock out. You're invested in the industry. Yeah, you're invest in the company that you would be working for. Like, you care.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about having experience. We've talked about problem solving. We've talked about, being safe and following those regulations. What about just like handling the workload?
Right.
Like just the day-to-day. Like, how do you manage all of that? So the question that comes to mind is, how do you prioritize and manage your workload as a leather production machine operator?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of just saying, oh, I'm organized or I'm good at multitasking.
Right.
But you really want to give them a peek into your system,
Okay.
So maybe you use a color-coded planner to keep track of all your tasks.
Okay.
Or maybe you have a system for prioritizing tasks based on deadlines.
Okay.
Whatever it is that works for you, lay it out clearly.
Got it. So it's almost like you're giving them a little window into how your brain works,
Exactly.
which is kind of scary. But also, like, that's what they want to know.
Exactly. And be prepared for those follow-up questions, because they might say something like, tell me about a time when you had to juggle multiple deadlines.
Right.
Or tell me about a time when, a rush order came in at the last minute. How did you handle that?
Yeah. And do you have a specific example that you can think of
Right.
that you can share? Because that's always a good thing to have in your back pocket.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have those stories ready.
Okay, perfect. And speaking of having things ready to go, this is where I think RoleCatcher can really come in handy,
Absolutely.
because they have this AI tool that you can use to actually practice your answers to these interview questions
It's fantastic.
and get feedback
Yeah.
on how you're doing.
And it's not just generic feedback.
Right.
It's personalized feedback based on the specific company that you're interviewing with and the specific job description.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's really tailoring it to that
Exact.
to that job, which is amazing. Okay, so we've got just a couple more questions to get through. Let's
Okay, do it.
dive into the next one.
So moving right along, let's talk about teamwork.
Okay.
This next question is, how do you work with other members of a production team to ensure that leather production machines are operating efficiently and effectively?
Okay, so this is all about collaboration.
It is. It is. And, it's your chance to really shine and show that you understand that you're not an island.
Right.
You're part of a team.
So how do you make your answer stand out for this one? Because it's easy to fall into those teamwork cliches.
It is, and that's what you want to avoid, right? So instead of giving those generic responses about being a team player or having good communication skills,
Right.
you really want to dig into your experience and pull out those concrete examples where you had to collaborate with others to achieve a common goal.
Okay, so paint me a picture here.
Okay, so let's say, for example, a machine malfunction,
Okay.
and it was causing a major bottleneck in the production line.
Happens all the time.
Right. And so instead of just trying to fix it on your own, you realize that you need to bring in other members of the team.
Right, different perspectives.
Exactly. Maybe you need to loop in the maintenance crew, or maybe you need to consult with the supervisor
Okay.
to get their input on how to best address the situation.
So it's like knowing when to ask for help, too.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that sometimes you need that outside perspective or that extra pair of hands
Right.
to get the job done right.
Makes sense.
And then once you've identified the problem and come up with a solution,
Okay.
how do you make sure that everyone's on the same page?
Yeah, it's a good point. Communication is key.
It is. And so, maybe you use a communication log to keep track of all the steps that have been taken.
To keep everybody in the loop.
Exactly. Or maybe you take the initiative to train a new team member
Okay.
on a specific procedure so that they can be more self-sufficient in the future,
Right.
It's those little things that really show that you're a team player.
It's like you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about the whole team's success.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, so we've talked about experience, problem solving, teamwork, and safety.
Right.
Now let's talk about staying current, because the leather industry,
Yeah.
it's constantly evolving.
Absolutely.
So the question is, what do you do to stay up to date on trends and developments in the leather production industry?
Right. And this is one of those questions where they're really trying to gauge your passion.
Okay.
Are you just looking for a job?
Right.
Or are you actually invested in this field?
Yeah. Are you excited about leather?
Exactly. And so, when you're answering this question, you want to convey that enthusiasm.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Well, first of all, you can talk about any industry publications or websites that you follow.
Okay.
So maybe you subscribe to Leather Today magazine, or you're a regular reader of the World Leather website.
Okay.
Whatever it is that helps you stay informed, mention it.
Stay in the loop.
Exactly. And then you can take it a step further by talking about any specific articles or trends that you've been reading about.
Oh, okay. So don't just say, I read this magazine. Say I read this magazine and this is what I learned.
Exactly. Give them some specifics.
Okay.
Maybe you recently read about a new type of eco-friendly tanning agent.
Okay.
Or you're interested in the latest advancements in laser cutting technology for leather.
Right.
Sharing that information shows that you're not just passively consuming content, you're actively engaging with it.
Just thinking critically about it.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to toot your own horn a little bit here.
Okay.
If you've attended any industry conferences or webinars or, taken any online courses,
Right.
definitely mention Lays as well.
Yeah. Show them you're invested.
Exactly. It's all about demonstrating that you're committed to continuous learning and development.
I love it. Okay, so we've talked about staying current, which is super important. What else do we need to cover?
Well, let's talk about quality.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, the quality of the leather goods that you produce
Of course.
is paramount.
So how do you ensure that those standards are met?
Right. So the question you're likely to get is, how do you ensure that leather production meets quality standards?
Okay, and that's a big one.
It is, and it's one that a lot of people struggle with because it's easy to fall into the trap of giving those vague answers.
Right, I pay attention to detail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, we want specifics.
Okay.
We want to know, what does that actually look like in practice?
So walk me through it.
Okay, so let's say you're working on a hide that needs to be a specific thickness.
Okay.
Well, how do you make sure that it meets those specifications?
Yeah.
Do you just eyeball it?
I hope not.
Probably not, right? Hopefully you're using a precision gauge
Right.
to take multiple measurements along the hide
Yeah.
to make sure that it's consistent.
And then what if you find an imperfection?
That's a great question because it's not enough to just identify the problem.
Right, you've got to fix it or figure out what to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
So do you flag it to a supervisor? Do you make adjustments to the machine settings? What is your process for addressing those quality control issues?
So it's about problem solving again.
It is. It's about showing that you're not just mindlessly operating a machine.
Right.
You're thinking critically about the quality of the product that you're producing.
You're invested in making sure it's good.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that. All right, so we've talked about experience, problem solving, teamwork, safety, staying current, quality control. What else is there?
Well, I think it's important to remember that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right, we've covered a lot, but there's always more.
Exactly. And that's where RoleCatcher can really be a game changer.
Okay, tell me more.
So, we've talked about the importance of tailoring your answers to the specific job description.
Right.
Well, RoleCatcher actually has this amazing CV and resume builder that uses AI
Oh, wow.
to help you do just that.
So it like scans the job description and figures out what they're looking for.
Exactly. It analyzes those key details, and then it helps you showcase your skills and experience in a way that's going to grab the hiring manager's attention.
Okay, so it's like having a secret weapon
It kind of is.
to make sure your application rises to the top of the pile.
Exactly. Because you might have all the right skills and experience,
Right.
but if your resume doesn't reflect that,
If it doesn't sing.
exactly, then you're not going to get your foot in the door.
Right. It's got to sound good on paper first.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so RoleCatcher can help you with that amazing. And then once you've got your foot in the door
Right.
and you've landed that interview,
Yes.
don't forget they've got that library of resources.
They do. They have thousands of interview questions covering all sorts of industries and job roles.
Okay, so whatever questions they throw at you, you'll be ready.
You'll be more than ready. You'll be over-prepared,
I love it.
which is exactly what you want.
Exactly. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
But I think it's important to remember that this is just the first step
It is.
in your journey to becoming a leather production machine operator. The real work begins when you step into that interview room. Yeah, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And to help you feel even more prepared, let's do a quick recap of those key takeaways
Yeah, let's do it.
for absolutely crushing that leather production machine operator interview.
All right, so number 1, be specific.
Okay.
Don't just tell them you have experience. Show them, talk about the specific machines that you've worked on, the techniques that you've mastered.
Right.
Even those aha moments where you solve a particularly challenging problem,
Yes.
the more detail you can provide, the more memorable you'll be.
The devil's in the details. Right?
Exactly. Okay, what else we got?
Number 2, highlight those problem-solving skills. Every workplace encounters challenges, and interviewers, they want to see that you can think on your feet,
Right.
that you can find solutions. So I have a couple of those. Tell me about a time when stories
Yes.
ready to go.
Love that.
Bonus points if those stories demonstrate adaptability and a willingness to learn from your mistakes.
Because nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
But it's all about how you recover. Exactly.
Right. Okay, what's next?
Number 3, safety and compliance are non-negotiables in this industry.
Right.
Make sure you're well-versed in those OSHA guidelines, and you can speak confidently about how you maintain a safe work environment for yourself and your team.
Yeah, and how you're a leader in that space as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, love it.
Number 4, teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes, it does.
Showcase that collaborative spirit, highlight situations where you've worked effectively with others
Right.
to achieve a common goal.
Yeah.
Whether it's troubleshooting a machine malfunction or, implementing a new production process, those team-oriented stories are really going to make you stand out.
Yeah, nobody wants to work with a lone wolf.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Teamwork all the way.
Okay, and last but not least.
Number 5, demonstrate your passion.
Yes.
Talk about how you stay up to date on industry trends, whether it's through publications, online courses, attending conferences.
Right.
It shows that you're not just looking for a job. You're looking for a career in a field that you're excited about.
You're in it for the long haul.
Exactly.
You're invested.
Absolutely.
Love it. All right, so much good stuff here. I feel like we've really armed our listeners
I think so.
with a lot of great information.
I hope so.
Is there anything else that you would add before we sign off today?
I think it's interesting to think about the future of this industry.
Yes.
With all the technological advancements that are happening,
Yeah.
who knows what the future holds?
Yeah, it's so true. Like we think about, plant-based leathers and 3D printing and even lab-grown leather.
It's incredible.
It's mind-blowing. So it's an exciting time
It is,
to be involved in this industry.
for sure.
So I think, as you're preparing for your interview, it's really, I think it's smart to think big picture.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself fitting into this evolving landscape?
What kind of impact do you want to make?
Yeah, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Big thoughts.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Big thoughts. But I think it's important
It is.
to think about those things.
It is.
All right, well, on that note, we are going to wrap up this deep dive.
This has been fun.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
And for our listeners out there, go get them.
Good luck.
We're rooting for you.